This is the Erin Cruz Show. Politics for the people and by the people. With your host, Erin Cruz.
Hello and welcome to the Erin Cruz Show. We have a packed night tonight. So many guests, but really, first off, I want to tell you, thank you for joining us again. Thank you for your support and thank you for sharing. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel right now. Make sure that you share these with all of your friends. Get out the word. We want to make sure that everybody's talking about the show, on the show, so we can have conversations, share information. That's what we're doing here. We're connecting people, connecting lives in California and across the nation. So yesterday, I went to the Dinesh D'Souza's premiere of Death of a Nation. Amazing movie. Everyone in this great nation should see it, young and old. It's phenomenal. It's thought-provoking. It's very powerful. After the show, I gave a talk. Many people gave talks that were invited, but I gave a talk, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to share it with you now, followed by our candidate guests. Our candidate guests tonight are a couple of congressional House of Representative candidates, as well as the Secretary of State, Mark MEUSER, California Controller, KONSTANTINOS, RODITIS, as well as a 14-year-old author of this political book about the state of Jefferson. Basically, a young man who's a conservative and wants to see strong representation for the north part of California. So thank you again for joining us. Hold on to your seats, grab your popcorn, and enjoy the show. My name is Erin Cruz, and I want to tell you all I am so grateful and honored to be able to be invited here this evening. I want to thank, first of all, Latinos for Trump. Thank
you so much.
Sponsoring the event and bringing all of us together. That's really what we need to be doing right now here in California. This is what Dinesh is working so hard to do. We may have the left, we may have the right, but really, we're all Americans. And some of us are working because we love America, and there are those that are working who hate America.
Exactly.
Okay? For those of you who don't know who I am, I ran for United States Senate against Dianne Feinstein. I didn't win the top two. But I'm going to tell you what, I saw a lot of what Dinesh was sharing in that movie right here on our soil. Right. I saw it right here in the state of California, and I saw it right here in San Diego.
Wow.
I saw it right in my U.S. Senate run. We had an anti-Semite who ran as a Republican. We had a Medicare for all, dental, vision, you name it, running as a Republican. Just joined the Republican Party. Our country is being infiltrated, and the Republican Party is being tarnished.
Yes.
There is nothing wrong with the Republican Party. The platform is strong. Conservative values are American values.
Amen. Amen.
Conservative values, family values, our Hispanic values, our Asian values. Man, woman. Identity politics is tearing apart America.
Yep.
I have been intimidated by our own party. I have been intimidated and bullied by the left. I have had death threats. I've been told not to run in 2022 against Kamala Harris by people on the left and on the right.
Oh.
I will not be intimidated.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
We are God-fearing patriots who love this country, and we will stand up and fight with our words, fight with our heart, for our love of country, for our love of conservatism, Amen. For the love of everything that we are and who we are.
Amen.
We will not stop until we take this country back.
Amen.
And I will run in 2022 against Kamala Harris. But you know what? I have to tell you, that is the goal, kind of. We can't stop at 2022. We have to think further.
Yep.
Okay? People right now, they think about now. This moment right now. What's helping them right now? We have to think forward. I have a heart for the country. I have a heart for our people. All United States citizens. And that's why I've committed myself up until 2018 to work to help every candidate who is a God-fearing Republican and patriot.
Yes. Yep.
By giving them a voice on the Erin Cruz Show as volunteer. I want to help them reach the people in the state of California, and I want to help them get elected so we can take this state back.
Yes.
Yes. This isn't about me. This is about all of you. I want to partner with you to help give them that voice. For example, we have a man in this room, a wonderful man. His name is Juan Hidalgo.
What energy he has.
He's amazing. Man.
He's a winner.
Yeah.
Yes, he had an uphill battle. He won it. He made the top 2.
Yoo-hoo.
Yes. But I've endorsed him for the United States Congress. I believe in what he's doing, and I believe what he stands for. And I know that he will stand with his constituents and he will stand with other citizens of this great nation and fight for us in D.C.
Yep.
Last week, was it, Juan, I had you on the show?
Yeah, 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago? Okay. People love it. They want to hear. They want to hear the good word, the positive message. I want to make sure and help these candidates get their message out. We have to stand together, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes.
This is a fight for the
Yeah.
future of our republic.
Yes.
Yes.
The left will stop at nothing, including putting Democrats, liberal, progressive left, in our own party, in our own races to bleed our vote.
Yes.
Yeah.
We can't let them. As a matter of fact, we have a United States congressperson running who made the top 2, who's a Republican, who's a Holocaust denier. Yes. Fitzpatrick.
No, don't need to know. Doesn't matter.
It's there. You can find it. Look. You may say, we don't need to know. The truth is here. The truth is real.
That's right. Amen.
This is our country and our future.
Praise
Yeah.
the Lord.
If we don't draw a line in the sand, where will we be?
We are Americans.
Yes, we are Americans. We need to unite. We need to unite. So here's the deal. Please stand with me, join with me, support the Republicans who are running for office, the good God-fearing citizens who are fighting for you and I. I need you all to give your time, talent, and treasure and invest. We need a red wave 2018
Yes.
like we've never seen before.
That's right.
And I want to go back to what that name was that I brought up. I do, I have to. I just have to say it.
Okay.
Please.
And the reason why is because he's not a Republican.
That's right.
Termite.
He's not a Republican. And that's what Danish was talking about on this screen.
Yep.
Is don't be fooled. Don't be fooled. They will do anything.
Yep.
You have to be brave.
Amen.
Okay? So in any case, I want to make sure and not take too much time. We only have a half an hour. I would like to make sure that Juan Hidalgo and Hector, he is able to speak. But again, time, talent, treasure. Go to erincruz.com to learn more about the show, the candidates that are running in your area, and be sure to spread the news. Like, share, and spread the good word about conservatism.
Tweet.
Oh, tweet. Make sure you tweet as well. Spread the word. Don't just scroll past that person who's sharing information on their campaign because it's political. Don't do that. Make sure you share it.
Yeah.
Be brave.
Yeah.
It's not a dirty word to be a conservative. It's not a dirty word to be a Republican or say you're a Republican. And it's not a dirty word or a dirty thing to say, I support President Donald Trump. Yes, we do. Citizens first. God bless you and God bless the United States of America.
Thank you, Erin. Thank you so much.
And now, back to the Erin Cruz Show. Here's Erin Cruz.
Hello and welcome to the Erin Cruz Show. We have a great lineup. Tonight we have with us KONSTANTINOS RODITIS. He is an amazing man. I've met him all through my campaign for U.S. Senate. I've seen him speak. I've seen him work with the people, talk to the potential constituents. He's running for controller, California controller, and this is a statewide race. He's a very busy man. He's looking to reach the people, and he's going to speak with you today. I'm going to want him to share a little bit about what a controller does. I don't even think that everybody really even knows what the California controller does. And quite frankly, I've heard him talk, and I still don't understand the major intricacies. But he can, I believe, shed a bit of light into this, and also let us know, what the current controller is doing really great, and what needs to really happen there, and how he can help us find strong solutions for California. We need those strong conversations and strong solutions. So thank you so much for joining here on the Erin Cruz Show. KONSTANTINOS, we just really appreciate you coming on.
Well, thank you for having me, Erin. And to basically get to the point of what a controller does. Well, it's really simple. The best ways to kind of think about it is the treasurer is kind of control of when the money comes in.
Right.
And the controller is when money comes out. So anything that comes out of basically the state's treasury goes through the controller's office, signs the checks. That's the main job of the controller, plus has independent audit authority. So, for instance, when you want to take a look at the high-speed rail, right?
Everybody wants to take a look at the high-speed rail.
Yeah, the supposed high-speed rail, which isn't very high speed. Now the controller has independent audit authority, but more importantly, what the controller has is the ability to hold all payments that don't comply with state law. So if you remember, the authorizing agent was Prop 1A, that authorized the bond for the high-speed rail. And it mandated that 1/3 of funding come from the state, 1/3 from the federal government, and 1/3 from private sector. Well, the federal government has stopped funding it, and the federal, and we've not seen one penny from the private sector. So, for instance, the controller would have unilateral authority to hold all payments on the high-speed rail, basically killing it until it complies with Prop 1A. So that's why it's important for us to have a controller
that does their job.
I'm sorry, can you say that last part?
It's important for us to have a controller that does their job and does it well. What I've heard is that our current controller isn't serving the people of California, and certainly the job can be done in a more appropriate manner, and that from what I've heard from you, you're the man to do that job. So now, what is, in your position as you've been campaigning, what is, some of the biggest heat that you're getting about your campaign in terms of what people want done from you? I mean, is it looking at some of those tough issues like the high-speed rail? I mean, what are the constituents talking to you about?
Well, they are really concerned, obviously, about the high-speed rail. Obviously, yes, on Prop 6 for repealing the gas tax. So besides the ability to audit and be the chief financial officer of the state, the controller, it has the power of the bully pulpit, just like the president does with Congress. Really has the power of the bully pulpit to make sure that we're being fiscally responsible, and that's what's missing from controller's office. So one of the things that I tell people is the current controller is actually pushing a service and labor tax. So, for instance, if you think healthcare got expensive under Obamacare, it's going to get a heck of a lot worse because Democrats in the legislature and the current controller is pushing basically at least $120 billion a year tax increase. Healthcare going to tax that. They're going to tax childcare. Yeah, basically name it. Any service that isn't taxed right now, they want to come after it.
And the current controller is in support of this.
Yeah, it's her plan. She's the one who authored a comprehensive tax reform, a contextual framework that was called. Really, all it was how can we tax you more instead
how
of
can
looking.
we take more of your money? How can we steal? How can we make it easier to steal taxpayer money in a lawful manner? So where do you stand on taxation then? I mean, it sounds to me like you're pro, less tax, if you will. You're for easing the tax burden on Californians, unlike CARB.
Yeah, and we have to actually cut taxes and regulations, primarily regulations, right? Because regulations is actually a tax. It works like a tax, but it's a tax at the beginning before you even build a product or you sell a service. So if it's too expensive for you to open up a business, there's nothing for you to sell. They'd be taxed on the back end. So number one thing is regulatory reform. That's the biggest engine to the economy that will spur by making more business friendly, and also the top marginal tax rates, especially now with the Trump tax plan of only $10,000 of tax deduction onto your federal taxes. We need to really adjust the way we do business in California, because before billionaires and millionaires were kind of insulated by California's bad policies, well, they're starting to leave the state now.
Right.
We're seeing reports of that, and the biggest problem is 70,000 people make 48% of the general fund to California.
Right.
15,000 make 25% of it. So we're the state of have and have-nots. That's why we have such big difference between the rich and the poor in the state.
Right,
of income
exactly.
equality. It's because we've become that kind of state.
It's unfortunate. Absolutely.
We will return to the Erin Cruz Show in just a moment.
My name is Jeff Gonzalez. I'm your candidate for the 56th District. I'm a dad. I'm a pastor. I'm a United States Marine. I want to go to Sacramento because we need to bring the Marines into Sacramento, and we need a change right now. You can find out more about me by visiting my website at www.gonzalezforassembly.com. That's GONZALEZFOR assembly.com. Or you can check me out on Facebook or Twitter. On Facebook, facebook.com/GonzalezForAssembly, or on Twitter, Jeff Gonzalez.
And now, back to the Erin Cruz Show. Here's Erin Cruz.
Here's the deal. You were sitting there and you were talking about writing checks, and you were talking about the bully pulpit. And I was just like, writing checks, oh, our money, bully pulpit. Ooh, you can actually talk about these things and really have control. So now, as it relates to some of these checks that are being written, as a constituent, as a mom, as a citizen in the United States who wants to see America first, Californians first, California and U.S. citizens first, some of the checks that are being written out of California, I mean, are just insane. And who they're being written for. I mean, where do you stand in terms of fiscal responsibility and ensuring that we're doing the right thing and we're making the right choices, and that you're doing your job and you're being that nice, loud voice and bully pulpit that you need to be? I mean...
Yeah, on those situations, for instance, like obviously I'm for taxpayer dollars being used on legal residents of California, obviously. But the thing is, as long as it complies with state law, as you know, the law basically is written that we're not, we don't have parameters on who can and who can't, depending on legal status, for instance. That's still compliant with state law.
Right.
Now, in those ones, I still have to cut checks.
Right.
I can't unfund programs because I personally don't like it. I believe in the rule of law.
Right.
So within those ones, now I can obviously put pressure on the bully pulpit, and it's important to get good legislators on the state senate and the assembly
Right.
districts that are, going to hold their feet to the fire and say, we're about helping people, but we can't be the welfare state of the world and
Right.
attract people here by our generosity.
Right, right. So now, the reason why I bring that up is because many people would say, well, then why are we cutting checks for, well, look, your job is to follow the law. Whatever state law is written, that's your job. So now, I'm just going to take that back, because one of the components and one of the reasons why I'm having you on the Erin Cruz show is just like to get out the word, to help people understand the function of government. We need to get those good legislature, members of the legislature that you're talking about in there, so that way you don't have those checks that you need to cut that maybe are adhering to California state law but may not be adhering to federal law, and perhaps, I'm not sure how the monies and the finite points are, but the citizens have a clear mark of what's going to be getting done. So we need to get those elected officials in place. That's for the California State Assembly and for the California State Senate.
Yes.
And clean up that mess. Now, I think that, after talking to you on the campaign trail, after hearing what you've had to say in your talks, and people can go, by the way, to your website, and you're going to give that to them here in a little bit, and learn more about you, learn more about your background. I think it's important for people to get educated on who's running and who's already in there. By the way, she is just a piece of work. I say that loosely. People need to get educated and make that right choice for who they're going to vote for, because you know what? You're a good man, and you'll do the good work of California and serve the people. Because one thing that I saw on the campaign trail as you were going around, as I'd see you in different rooms and in different talks, you would listen. You're a good listener, and that's far and few between, especially with politicians, by the way. So.
Well, that's why I've been a successful businessman my entire life, basically, being in the business world.
Right. Tell us about that. Let's go on a tangent.
Yeah. Well, when I was doing a recent endorsement interview, and they said, well, kind of about your background, I'm like, well, as a CEO and a chief financial officer, the number one thing that I need to know about myself is what I don't know, right? What I'm stupid at, into the sense, right?
Right.
It's because then I have to hire the right people to go ahead and fill in those gaps, or people with the knowledge to inform me so I can make the right decisions.
Right.
So that's why it's important about, I don't know everything, but it's for me to surround myself. I have a good worldview, a good foundation, and the information as it come in from an audit or a report, I can absorb that in and make the right decision. So that's why it's important to always listen, because sometimes you don't have the right answer. And if your goal is to, just to win an argument, then that's fine. I'm looking to, win the argument into the sense of I was right and this is what's best for California. And that's what's more important than my ego.
Right. And I I love what you say right there, because campaigning and watching everyone, what I saw were a bunch of egos. And what one of the biggest problems we have in government right now are egos. We have to put people first. And that's what I saw time after time after time again when I saw you in rooms. You're putting the person right in front of you that you were talking to first. They were important to you. Their thoughts were important to you. What was going on in their life was important to you. And that's commendable. And I'm so glad that you bring up ego. Egos need to move out of the way. We need to have the information, be able to get the good work done, and be able to serve Californians. So, could I have you repeat your name, your race, and then also, a little bit about yourself, and then give people information on where they can find you on social media or even your website, and learn more about your campaign.
Oh, perfect. Well, my name is Konstantinos RODITIS. I'm running for California State Controller. The best way to find me is at my website at cacontroller.com. I am a businessman, a chief executive officer, and chief financial officer, and I'll take my knowledge and experience as a successful businessman in the private sector to Sacramento and replace a lifelong bureaucrat.
Yes, we need you. We need you, Konstantinos. I'm telling you, we do. We need you in the California legislature. High time to have a good, solid businessman in there and putting people first, Americans first, Californian, United States citizens first, and get this state back on track. Common sense. Common sense is what we need. Thank you. Thank you so much for being on the Erin Cruz Show. We are going to have you back. It's a long run till November. We're going to, next time we have you on, we'll let you talk a little bit more about specifics, get into some of the policies and the legislation, and talk about the fine points, because I think Californians need to hear it to be able to make that hard choice when they go check that mark in November. I think it's November 6th, right, is the vote?
Yes.
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 Yes. Konstantinos RODITIS for California Controller. Doesn't that sound great? Thank you so much for being on the Erin Cruz Show.
Thanks for having me, Erin. I appreciate it.
We will return to the Erin Cruz Show in just a moment.
Do you see dead people? Because they're voting in California. Corrupt politicians are using dead people to steal elections. Last October, we learned that a Mexican citizen used a dead man's ID for the last 25 years, and he voted for him multiple times. A CBS investigation found that hundreds of dead people are still voting in LA. By allowing dead people to vote, the Secretary of State is telling you that your vote does not matter. You know what? Your vote does matter. All votes matter. Elections matter. Let's stand together. Let's fight for fair and free elections. I'm Mark MEUSER. I'm running for California Secretary of State. I don't see dead people, but I do approve this message.
And now, back to the Erin Cruz Show. Here's Erin Cruz.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, just this last, 2 days? 2 days ago, it seems like years ago, eons ago, I caught up with Mark MEUSER, the gentleman who was just in that commercial just a few seconds ago, a dynamic man, really working hard to make California golden again. He's going up and down the state, getting out the vote, getting out the message that we have to have fair and free elections here in the state of California. It doesn't matter who you are. The message is clear. So this is what he had to say when I sat down with him. Thank you, Mark, for being on the Erin Cruz Show today. I have to ask you, you came out here all the way to the Coachella Valley. You rode your bike. I heard you're on a bike tour throughout the state. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, right now I'm doing a 58-county state of California. We're doing it over 46 days. I started in the Bay Area on July 9th, and I'm going all the way to August 23rd when I'll roll through Orange County. We will finish up this bike tour.
Wow. Wow. So what made you get to the point where you wanted to do that bike tour? I mean, we know you're, running for Secretary of State. There are 58 counties, but I mean, what got you to that place where you said, you know what, I'm going to do this by bike?
Well, I'm a lover of history, and I've always loved where the campaigns used to be what we call whistle-stop tours, where they got on a train and went from town to town to town to town, and they just took their campaign to the people. And I figured if I'm running for Secretary of State, there are 58 counties that are going to be voting for me, and I wanted to take my message to each and every county and talk to the voters. And you can't do it on train anymore. So you could drive, but I like to bike ride, and I just, looking at the map and the cities and like, you know what? Let's just ride our bike between all these cities and, it create, I used to race bicycles about 20 years ago. About 3 years ago, I did an Ironman. So
wow,
I'm not in the shape that I'd like to be. But by the time I'm done with this tour, I might be starting to get back into shape again.
Well, you look great. You look great, and it looks like you're really enjoying yourself. The people are enjoying spending time with you. And you're not just reaching out to Republicans on this tour through the state. I've heard you've even run into, say, some Customs and Border Enforcement individuals and other people on the street as you're going through town to town. You have the opportunity to meet people on the ground. And how's that sat with you, and what's the reaction?
Well, we've been having great reaction. I mean, I've been in many cities where, they are not used to seeing a statewide candidate. I mean,
or even meeting a Secretary of State candidate.
Yeah, I mean, I was in one town which probably has 75 people, and we stopped at their local restaurant for lunch, and I had a great conversation with one of the, not town father, because it's like his great grandfather was the town father of that.
Right.
Yes, but
right,
it was
right.
We're just traveling around having real conversations. We have this big 31-foot RV that has my face plastered over it.
And you're going to give a picture to us of when we just did our little photo and everybody was here, and I'll share that with the viewers. I mean, that's just phenomenal. I mean, what is the message then that you're sharing when you're going from town to town and talking to these voters?
Well, first I have to identify the problem.
Right.
People have to understand the problem before they're ready for a solution.
So what does the Secretary, let's back up one step further. What does the Secretary of State do?
The Secretary of State is the chief election officer. And so here in the state of California, we have the second worst elections in the entire nation, according to a liberal think tank.
And they're not that conservative on their numbers, so yeah.
But, across 14 measurables,
right,
scientifically data studied,
right,
California has the second worst elections in the nation.
And you, as a Secretary of State, once you're elected, what would be your role?
My role is to administer elections, from voter registration to election day procedures, to counting the vote and making sure that it's not being hacked, to making sure that there are proper audits in place so that if somebody tries to steal an election, we're able to catch them and prosecute them.
Right, right. So now we can go to the other, which is we have problems.
Yes.
And what are your solutions? What are the problems? What are the solutions?
The problem, 11 counties with over 100% voter registration.
LA 144%.
Yep. San Diego 138. The solution to that is simply cleaning up the voter rolls to make sure that only those people who are eligible to vote are on the voter rolls. Recently, there was a Supreme Court case out of the state of Ohio where they determined, well, this lawsuit was that Ohio was too aggressive in cleaning up the voter rolls. The Supreme Court ruled that they were okay. But what was interesting is the state of California joined in a brief with the plaintiff saying, here are 11 different government databases that you can use to clean up your voter rolls to make sure that you have clean voter rolls.
Right.
The state of California is only using 3 of those.
So we aren't using our resources and data available to us. It's basically waste of government.
Yeah.
If they're not using the tools at their disposal, they're not serving the people.
I mean, people got upset after 9/11 because the CIA and the FBI were not communicating with each other.
Right.
Voter registration, people are communicating with their government. We live in the day of big data. It's just a matter of the data being shared from one government agency to another. And California has identified 11 different databases that can be used.
Right, right.
But we're not doing it.
And that's something you'd like to see changed.
Yeah. So then, better election day procedures. We need to actually train our poll workers.
So education. Training.
Better education on what the election law is, what election procedures is. We need to spend a little bit more time because our poll workers are the face of our elections.
Right.
And so what's important is that we actually give them the tools to better equip them to handle the situations that we are dealing with on election day. MarkMeuser.com, MarkMeuser.com.
There you have it. Mark Meuser, Secretary of State, doing the good and hard work to get out the vote in California. I mean, please go online, check out his information, support him, support his campaign. Get involved. Get out that vote. California is not lost. We have to take action to make California golden again and get our voter system back on track. So stay tuned, because right now Alexander HORAT is going to come on. He's going to talk about his new book about the state of Jefferson and the potentiality for the state of California to split in two. We need to remain united, but there are some very, very difficult conversations ahead. Here's what Alexander HORAT has to say. Tonight we have on with us a young author. I say young, he's not that young, but he's also a youth. I mean, 14 years old. He's written a book, and it's not just any book, okay? It's a political book, a politically minded book. Right now with us, you see right there on your screen in your home, Alexander HORAT. He's a Californian. I mean, he even lives in the state of California, and he wrote a political book, and he's 14. Thank you for coming on the Erin Cruz Show, Alexander. We are so grateful to have you. Can you tell us about your book?
Yes, thank you for having me on your show.
Absolutely.
So I wrote this new book called Why We Need the State of Jefferson, to explain what the State of Jefferson movement is doing in Northern California.
Right.
And the reason why we want this new state called the State of Jefferson is because the 21 counties in Northern California that have 33% of California's total landmass only have 9 elected representatives statewide, while California's other 35 counties have 111 representatives. So we have no representation, we have no voice in the government whatsoever. So that's a huge problem. We're basically like the 13 colonies who were taxed and regulated by England. We're just taxed and regulated by the rest of California.
Interesting. Now, I live in California. I live in that other more represented area, if you will, and I still feel like I'm not represented. You know, the people, you know, politics is such a difficult thing in California because a lot of people feel like their voices aren't heard, that they don't have the voice that they should have in the legislature. But I'll also tell you, Alexander, that I did run for United States Senate, and I was always told that my people were in the North, and, you know, more conservative individuals who want less government, people out of their homes who want, you know, real people doing the real work, patriots who love this country, not bought for and paid for politicians.
Exactly.
And their biggest struggle from every one of those individuals in the North who I was told are my people are, over and over and over again, I would hear that it's a representation issue. There's a representation issue, and there's a representation issue. And here you are, a 14-year-old that's talking about this struggle, the frustration of the people up there. Can you tell us a little bit more about your book and why it is seen as so important for the people up there to have that kind of representation, and why you would want to go so far as to removing yourself from the state?
So the State of Jefferson stands for limited government and fair representation. And since we don't have representative people, we have no voice in the government, so we can't change these things.
Right.
The State of Jefferson is against the sanctuary state. They oppose the sanctuary state. They oppose a lot of these new taxes like the gas tax.
Right. So you're basically less government and more power to the people, in the sense that people get to live their lives and free of oppressive government, right?
Exactly.
Now,
like, if you look at the demographics of California, if you just look at the 2016 election map, you will see that Northern California, the State of Jefferson area, was pretty much a red block, while there is a few other areas, but this is the biggest red block.
Mm-hmm.
The other areas of California were mostly liberal.
Right.
So that's the main reason why we want to make the state of Jefferson, is because we don't stand for these liberal policies. And unfortunately, I believe California is basically on the path of Venezuela, enacting all these new socialist laws. We have the biggest debt in the whole nation, the biggest state debt, while we still have the highest tax rate at 13.3% income tax for the state. And we're paying for all of this. And, it's just the mismanagement of the funds, I think, because we shouldn't be in debt like this.
Right. Well, we have a lot of money coming in. Why is all of our money going out? And who's it going out to? And why? I think that's part of it as well, I have to ask you, because people, we can talk about your book, but really the point would be people should get your book, buy your book, read your book, and understand, where you're coming from and your perspective and what you're sharing. But what I really want, and you're going to give that information where they can buy your book at the very, very end. What I want to know is, how is it that a young man like yourself is conservative, and how you got involved in this entire Jefferson movement?
Well, I got involved through my parents. My parents have been helping me. Like, my mom's from Venezuela, so I know what these communist socialist laws do to a country, the people that are starving and eating each other. And I don't want that to happen in California. But this is the way I see it. If people down south want to live in a place like that, then fine. But we, the people who live up here, who don't want to live with a tyrannical government, shouldn't have to. It says in the Constitution how we have the right to throw off any tyrannical government. So that's what we want to do. We want to make a new state so we can have a voice in the federal government and the state government to further our values, because our values aren't being represented.
Right. Now, so you decided that so I want to understand, so because of your family life and your relationship with your mother and what you've heard, her family's gone through, that you just can't, you weren't okay with that, and you decided that, this is something that's important to your family, this is something that's important to you, and you wanted to help share the information with people.
Yeah, it's important to a lot of people up here. Most people in Northern California support the state of Jefferson. That's why these 21 counties petitioned with California to make this new state.
Right.
So right now, to make this state, we're suing the state of California for lack of representation and dilution of vote, because we used to have the federal model of government, which through that, each county had one state senator, kind of like each state has two senators.
Mm-hmm.
But we lost that through the Warren Court, so now it's just based on population, like the assembly.
Right.
So now we have no power whatsoever. So we're trying to get into so we sued, and the judge was denying our day in court and not giving us a 3-judge panel. So now we're trying to get directly into the Supreme Court, because this is a huge issue. So that's really what's going on right now.
Right. So you're really involved in this. I mean, where do you think that this is going to go for you? You're writing, you've written this book, you obviously are interested in sharing information with the people and getting out the message. Where do you want this to go? I mean, your activism and reaching the public, is this something that you're going to keep going with? You're going to keep talking about the state of Jefferson? I mean, and sharing that message. Do you talk to people in your community? I mean, what else do you see for you in this movement?
Well, we need the new state because California is going on the wrong track. We have the highest poverty rate in the nation. Just take a look at San Francisco with all those human feces everywhere. So we just don't want that to happen up here too, and which it could very well happen.
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping that doesn't happen. I campaigned throughout the state for U.S. Senate, and I will have to agree with what was said. My people are in the north. I love the people all throughout the state. There are so many good patriots who actually think the same way you do, who don't feel that they're being represented throughout the state of California. But the people up there in the north, they have very, very different needs, and I can respect that. But what I did ask for them to do is to help us fight to take this state back in 2018, because, if we have good representation, strong representation, we wouldn't be in this situation.
Yeah,
and you wouldn't be calling for the state of Jefferson. This is what I really believe. I believe that if the people in the legislature were representing the people of California in an appropriate manner, we wouldn't be in this state of flux. People wouldn't be calling for New California. People wouldn't be calling for the state of Jefferson. People wouldn't be putting ballot initiatives, splitting the state in 3. We would be in a functional space, and that's what I've been calling for, is unity through 2018. One of the interesting points I did mention to people up in the north when I was campaigning there was I told them, if the people of California don't work hard to take the state back, if you do it the right way, that's up to you to move in the direction of splitting the state and to do it through proper process, right? And that's what you're talking about. You're talking about going through the proper process to split the state. And it's a very brave move you're making, by the way, young man, to be 14 years old, writing this book and stepping into a pile of mud, calling for proper representation. Because for me, down in the north, down in the south, I don't want to see my state split. I want to see my state functional. And I'm going to tell you, it would be best for me if we could listen to people like you in the north and make sure that representation was appropriate and proper the way it, was supposed to be structured, so you wouldn't have to feel or see that you need to break off from the state. Why don't you have proper representation? And I told the people in the north I would fight for that for them, and that's one of the reasons why I decided to have you on the show, because I think that if people understand about your book, okay, and what you're trying to talk about, that if we solve the problems, you wouldn't need your state. We would be the state of California. We would be functional again. But, you have to do what you have to do as a region. I get that. But my heart is for the people of California, and proper representation is part of that. And I'm going to tell you, I'm commending you for jumping up and beating this drum and making this fight an argument, because it's a brave move. It's really a brave move, young man. It's huge. Now tell us the name of your book again.
So the book is called Why We Need the State of Jefferson, and you can get it on Amazon. And you can also follow me on Twitter at Alexander HORAT. So it basically says the main reasons why we need it. And, I agree with you that it would be great if all of California could become conservative again. But unfortunately, it just doesn't seem like, I guess it could happen, but as of now, it just doesn't seem really that's the main reason why we want this new state, is because this would actually create a new state that's for the people. If you look at these other movements like the 3-state and New California, if you actually look at the demographics, it would just make a whole bunch of new Democrat states, which I'm not for. But I do agree with you, though. If we could get California back on the right track, I would, that would be great.
That would be great. But see, here's the thing. I traveled the entire state, and I met people in small towns, big cities, you name it. All different kinds of people. Very, very, poverty-stricken people, homeless people, homeless veterans even, all the way up to the most wealthy of wealthy, okay? Affluent people that don't have a want or a need, care in the world. They live their life. All different kinds of people. One thing I noticed is that they all want good things for their family. That's the common thing. They all want good things for themselves and their family. The other thing is that where you would think that there are no conservatives, like in Sacramento, in San Francisco, even in LA, Some of these regions, they are literally fighting. They're not fighting physically, but they're fighting the information war. They're fighting the word war. The media battle is huge. And part of it, I think, is you can look at the voting blocks. Yes, you can look at those numbers. I think it's important to look at the data. Yes. But there are good people in very liberal places that are fighting back. I think that part of it is we have a government that has gone rogue, and it's not just in California, it's spreading across the country. And even our federal government is out of control. They've gone away from, their limited responsibility. I believe that the people who live in those areas and even the most liberal areas in California are fighting. They're fighting all over to get us back to the place where, we're living in a space of, strong morals, strong values. They may not all be conservative, but they want good things for their family, and they are more conservative minded. And to just say that LA is uber liberal and lost, or to just say that San Francisco is lost, there are people who are really fighting. Part of our problem is the media. They're pushing things in a way which is just making everybody making an argument. It's dividing people. And I don't like division. I believe in unity. And so I would like to see, all people in California have representation. So I'm just wondering, and I know you're working, towards the State of Jefferson movement. I know you are. But maybe I could see it in my mind that maybe you could kind of think of a space of how we could go about getting proper representation for the entire state of California back.
Yeah, that's what we're doing with this court case. It's either California gives us back our one state senator per county, or they give us the new state if they want to hold on to power.
But I don't even know, and that's the proper process that it needs to go through. But what movement could we do that unites California and puts them in a position where it's most now, best for them to be able to come up with that as a solution? Because let's face it, splitting California is not good for everybody. It's not good. I don't believe, you believe it's good for you in the north. I don't believe it's the best thing for you in the north, and I don't believe it's the best thing for us in the south. I believe a united California is the best thing with proper representation. So I guess the courts will have to decide.
Yeah, this is how I think of it. If we could get proper representation, then great. I'm all for staying with California, or California could get back on the right track.
Right.
But if it's going to stay a liberal state, I don't see why we should go down with California becoming a totalitarian state. So that's the main reason why I want the state of Jefferson, because I see what's happening, and we don't believe in that.
No, and I don't believe in that either. And I don't. And I think that many Californians would agree with that. I think that many Californians would agree with you on that. And I really would hope that people would read your book, go to your website, learn more about the State of Jefferson movement, and get educated on what's happening in California. Because for me, I see the North as an asset to California that we just can't bear to lose. And that Sacramento needs to get its act together, and that we need to have proper representation. That's what I see. But I think more people need to talk about that. I mean, the split is nobody talks about it, and the state of Jefferson goes, and we have big problems, because not only does the state of Jefferson have to go in its merry way, it also has to create its own government, which that's a lot of money and a lot of resources. But then the state of California, it's going to have its own issues. It's a big problem, and it's not good, I don't think, in the long term. But, we'll have to see it play out. And I hope, young man, I hope that you continue to write, and I hope that you continue to share, and maybe even document your experiences through this entire process, because it's important. You're like, yes.
Yeah, thank you.
And stay active, because it's vital. It's really vital because you have an inside glimpse up there, a perspective that you can share, and it's good.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you pretty much. Besides, the reason why we need it though, of California, I've already said.
No, you can go ahead. Go.
If we keep staying on the communist track, I don't think we need to go down with the train because we were never supporting that before.
Well, yeah, and
it would be great if you could become senator though and take back California though. I'm definitely all for you becoming the senator.
I know. That's what people said. We are going to have to move to the north, Erin.
Yeah, I would love. You could make a speech in Tuolumne County. People would love to come and see you.
Oh, well, I definitely will. I went up as high as, I believe it was Eureka. I went to Eureka. I went, obviously I was in Humboldt County, but I went to Del Norte.
Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful county, and the people are amazing. I'm going to tell you, my heart is in the north, but this won't be the last time that we hear from you. I'm sure, Alexander, you're going to have to come on the show again, share more of your perspective, and talk to people a little bit more. Can you give your name and your book again, where they can find it, buy it, and support your cause?
Yes, so my name is Alexander HORAT, and I'm 14 years old, and my book is called Why We Need the State of Jefferson, and I'm on Twitter at Alexander HORAT. So thank you, Erin, for letting me be on your show, and I would definitely want to be on again.
Absolutely. I have to tell you, I've been so busy, I haven't even gotten to the space of ordering your book. I'm going to have to order your book, and I'm going to have to actually read it. I just really I had to have you on now, even before I read it, because I wanted to hear what you had to say, and I wanted to make sure that everybody else could order it too. So
yeah, check it out, yeah.
So well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for being on the show. God bless you, and God bless your family. Bye.
Okay, thank you.
We will return to the Erin Cruz Show in just a moment.
My name again is Morgan Murtaugh, and you can find more information about me or donate, volunteer at morganmurtaugh.com. You don't have to live in California to volunteer. You can phone bank from anywhere in the world. And so again, I'm running on securing our border. I'm running on cutting taxes. I'm running on helping small businesses, because the state of California and the federal government as a whole have done a disservice to the citizens of the United States when it comes to those things, and the citizens of San Diego, my district, my home. And so all the help I can get to help to promote this message and to get people like Susan Davis, who are career politicians who just sit there and do nothing, out of office, help.
And now, back to the Erin Cruz Show. Here's Erin Cruz.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for coming back to hear our next candidate on the Erin Cruz Show and the Candidate Connection. We have a special guest tonight running right up into his primary election, which I believe the vote is tomorrow, Thursday, the 2nd of August. Time flies. Is that correct? 2nd of August?
That's correct, 2nd of August. About maybe around 8, 9 o'clock in the evening, we'll know who the winner is. Hopefully it'll be us.
Wow. So this is Todd McKinley. He is running for the United States Congress. He's running in Tennessee's 1st District. I mean, he has an uphill battle there that he is winning. We are going to go ahead and, take over that House seat. Tell us, Todd, about yourself and why you wanted to run for the House of Representatives and be in Congress.
Okay, yeah. A little about myself. I was born and raised here in the 1st Congressional District. I served 20 years in the United States Army. I'm an Iraq and Afghanistan combat veteran. Yes. I've served 6.5 years in the swamp in D.C. at the White House.
6.5 years and you survived?
I did. I survived. I served from '02 to '09, Bush Cheney administration, then Obama Biden administration briefly. Right. And I got to tell you, going to Iraq as a military advisor was better than serving under the Obama administration. I can tell you that. But, I retired from the Army and moved back home. Very active in veteran service organizations. Very, very passionate about serving the veterans, serving in my community.
You were just telling me that you were, in our pre-interview, that you were doing some work, right?
Absolutely. I was just at Veterans Town Hall here at the local VA. I went there for about an hour just to hear what the veterans have to say, kind of get a feel for what's going on out there in the community from that standpoint that I don't see in my veteran service organization. So, and whenever we do win this thing, I'll know exactly what the issues are on day one going into it. And in fact, I'm actually running against the House Veterans Affairs chairman, very ensconced politician who promised 5 terms. Now in his 5th term, running for a 6th term. He's hoping people forgot about those things. So that's a little bit about myself in a nutshell.
So your family, you have...
Yeah, I'm single, and mother and father. I have 2 brothers, who served in the United States Army. 2 nieces and a nephew. Aunts and uncles, but no kids of my own. So I'm going to be able to focus. Are they in Tennessee? I'm going to be able to focus 100% of my time on this job. So that's what I'm going to do.
Right. So now your family, are they in Tennessee, or are they?
Tennessee, and my older brother lives up in Norfolk, Virginia. He works for the Navy now.
Okay. So you have a family of service as well.
That's true. Yeah, I had a grandfather who served, great uncles who served. In fact, I had a great uncle who was killed in World War II. So a lot of history of service in the family, going back probably to maybe the Revolutionary War, at least the Civil War that I know of.
Right.
Yes.
I believe I remember we're in some groups together and reading about a little bit of that. So now, you're running for the House of Representatives. You're running a vigorous race. You really want to serve your constituents. You want to help us because it's us, really. You're in Tennessee. You're running. What you do affects us over here in California. It affects all Americans, all citizens. And it's. But you want to change things up, and you want to serve the people. And I heard you talking about 4th term, 5th term, 6th term of the incumbent. Right. Where do you sit on term limits?
I'm all for it, actually. In fact, I've signed a term limits pledge to serve no more than 3 terms, and I'm going to move on after 6 years. Our founding fathers set it up to be a citizen legislator, or legislature, if you will, and we don't have that. We have basically bought and paid for politicians that go there, lose touch with their constituent, lose touch with their base, lose touch with what the real issues are and why they originally wanted to get into these things. And it becomes hard to get them out because so much big money gets into politics, and basically they're bought and paid for after so many terms. And I'm tired of that, and that's one of the big reasons why I want to run.
That's wonderful that that you're thinking of term limits. It might take you. I was looking at term limits, especially running for U.S. Senate. There is a reason why we have senior members, in this sort of thing for order and also for stability of the country. But I think you have something right. There should be a fine balance between how much, about how much time these people spend in D.C. and the money that's available to them or is made available to them by grabbing it. Look at Feinstein. She's a multi-millionaire on $200,000 a year. But I think you have it right that they leave their home. They pretty much spend a lot of time. It's supposed to be a part-time legislature.
Right,
really,
exactly.
If they spent more time at home, serving longer, it's not necessarily a bad thing. But I think the system that we currently have right now is just riddled with abuse, abuse and manipulation.
And that's why we need to make some changes there. Ethics changes. We need campaign finance reform. Again, term limits would help push back against the bad decisions bad legislatures make. So that's one reason why I support things like that. And there's a lot of other things we should end up pushing, but it's going to take the individual to show up to vote. My state, we are actually last in voter turnout. We're next to last in voter registration. And if you look at the number of people in the previous presidential election that didn't vote, we had like 90-some million eligible voters that didn't vote. Had they shown up and vote, maybe they could have elected a third-party candidate, or maybe Donald Trump would have gotten more votes, or Hillary Clinton. Who knows? But 90 million people didn't vote.
Right. And we do have a representative republic, right. But I think that the important part is people need to be a part of that process. And then those people who aren't serving, and I agree with the campaign finance reform, there's massive abuse. I mean, once you're an incumbent, your purse strings are huge.
Yes.
I mean,
right.
and
Yeah,
trying
your
to
bank
get that
account
name
just
out.
grows exponentially.
Right. And so I think that your war chest is huge, and you can just go and do whatever you want. You have the name recognition. It makes it difficult for somebody else to come in and unseat them. But term limits, campaign finance reform, I'm sure term limits are high on your constituents list, things that they want to see done. Campaign finance reform, perhaps maybe some of them do. What are some of the other issues?
Some know a little bit about it, but you talk about it in a different term. Like you talk about special interest money, lobbyist money. Right. They understand it at that point. Whenever you start talking it like that,
right?
Another big thing in my platform is education reform and healthcare reform. The person I'm running against is a physician. He talked about, give us the House, give us the Senate, give us the White House, and we'll basically repeal and replace Obamacare. And he talks about, I led the Republican charge to repeal and replace Obamacare. But that was a massive failure when President Trump got into office. It was a massive failure. No one wanted it.
Let's talk about this, though. He ran on that, right?
Right. He ran on that year after year. And he talked about having a piece of legislation. He used to pull up a stack of paper like this and say, I have legislation ready to go day one. But now that he's, got the House, got the Senate, got the White House, he doesn't talk about that anymore. That's out the window.
I just actually, I have to say this is a conversation that I'm having with many candidates, and it's. I believe this resonates with the everyday American and many of your constituents. We hire you, and it's like a corporation. It would be different. We hire you for a job. If you don't do the job, you get fired. We hire politicians. We vote them in. If you don't do the job, you have name recognitions and huge purse strings, you're still going to get hired.
Right. Yeah, it's hard to get fired.
I believe that, term limits will help with that, but I think that people need to hear this. Todd McKinley wants to do the hard work that you've elected prior politicians to do, and they haven't done, and that is repeal and replace Obamacare.
Right.
And I think that's important to talk about that, Todd, because people have hired these congressional members in the House of Representatives over and over again. Let's take the House. Now we need the Senate.
Right.
Now we need the President. And then what? I mean, we have all three.
Nothing.
We have all three. There's now no excuse for not having repealed and replaced Obamacare, or at the very least, if they can't repeal it, they should have done more than what Donald Trump did in actually rolling it back and working with the Democrats to find solutions. They're not finding solutions. So, Todd, can you talk to your constituents and also the Erin Cruz show listeners and watchers about what your plan is to try to accomplish some of those hard tasks like immigration and Obamacare, getting these people to work?
Absolutely. Since we were on healthcare, I'll tell you what I want to see is upfront pricing. Day one with healthcare. You think about it. You go buy a new car. What do they have in the window? They have a window sticker. Why doesn't your physician have to have upfront pricing? That changes maybe on a somewhat regular basis. Maybe every year it can change. But they have to give you notice, hey, prices are going to change for this. Give you enough notice so that way you can shop for another physician. And your physician should have to compete for your business. Health insurance should be able to be purchased across state lines. Also I like to see patent reform whenever it comes to healthcare. You think about it, these health or pharmaceutical companies can basically set the price for several years at a time or decades at a time for whether it's some sort of opioid or medication that you need or medical device. Let's say they come out with a new type of hip replacement surgery. So they can set a patent on that. And they can renew that patent for indefinitely. So I'd like to see them not be able to do that. That way it drive down prices, and we would get to generics a lot quicker.
Competition is what you're talking about.
More competition, absolutely.
Right.
You think about it. Somebody with with diabetes buys insulin here for a month, pays about $500 to $700 for a month's prescription. You go to Germany, you're paying maybe $100, $200 at the max, or less for a month. Excuse me.
Right. So I think what I was hearing is competition, and we need to just start getting them
Right.
to the place where they're. I mean, what do you think about like alternative medicines? I know here in California, one of the interesting things. There are a lot of bad things people say about California. I know
Right.
it.
Lot
I'm
of
really
good
working
things,
hard
too.
to take our country and our state back, but. One of the interesting things is that they really had a movement for more holistic coverages for more holistic practices, because preventative medicine is such a key role, has such a key place in long-term overall
Right.
health. And I think that it's important to look at the big picture. What do you think about alternative medicines and that sort of thing being, like you said,
Right.
pricing and other things? I mean, I'm not talking about wacky treatments, but I'm talking
No.
about substantive, research methodologies that big pharma or even big lobby or even big government
Right.
don't want to see more competition. What do you think about some of those ideas?
If it works, it works. Things like acupuncture, as an example, I've had it done. A lot of people would down it, but things like that should be covered. Medicinal marijuana. We're finally just getting our arms wrapped around it, where that's a big topic in our gubernatorial or Senate races or House races, and where people are just now getting to the point where they're saying, oh, maybe we need to do some more testing or something like that. I'm all for that. I think we should legalize it, especially for medicinal purposes. And it would be an alternative to the opioids, and would probably limit the opioid crisis that we're having. You push back against that, I think.
So alternative remedies are something that you're willing to look at, and as far as regulatory restrictions and freeing up some of the regulations and letting the market work for itself.
Reduce regulatory burden for sure. Pardon for me interrupting, but reduce regulatory burden without a doubt, and allow people to try. If we're going to live in a free society, people should have the freedom to choose things that work best for them. As long as the physician says, hey, this is going to perhaps work for your condition, by all means.
And it's monitored healthcare. I mean, I
Right.
think that your health should be between you and your doctor.
Absolutely.
And
I think
the insurance has to figure it out, but
Right.
the regulations should be not burdensome. So now,
Sure.
So now go into a little bit about, tax. I think that in why I'm thinking about this is we talked about regulation. We talked about big government a little bit in relation to Obamacare and it serving itself and feeding the beast and staying huge. About tax, I think tax reform, it's pretty much Trump has done what he can, but I don't think they got as far as they needed to. And even in immigration, it's like they can't have these conversations and work for the American people. Where do you stand on furthering tax reform?
I'd like to see probably, the IRS be defanged, if you will, so they can't be weaponized by future administrations, because at some point it's going to go back to the Democrats, and of course they'll weaponize it for sure. So defang the IRS, probably go to a flat tax, perhaps a 10% tax. I've looked at the idea of a sales tax, just a flat sales tax, something like that. So there's a lot of things that are out there that we could look at. Rand Paul has some great ideas. Ted Cruz has some great ideas. But less taxes would be a lot better. Of course, less government spending, less bureaucracy at the federal level, push more things down to the state and local level, like education, and a lot of those type of regulatory agencies as well. The federal government should only do just a few things: provide for the common defense, conduct diplomacy, and basically be the arbiter between the states. Really, three things.
Very simply.
Simple, but now we've allowed our federal government to grow to such a degree that once you create a federal bureaucracy, an agency or department, you can never get rid of it.
Right.
It basically creates a reason for being in itself.
Right. Well, I think you have a good point there. You make a good point. And it sounds like you want to move Congress in the right direction.
Absolutely.
And it's impressive that you've made the strides that you have. And we really hope here at the Erin Cruz Show and in California, and I'm sure across the nation, for those who know you and have been following you on social media, because you do have a social media presence, we do hope you get into office, because with people with your background, with your ideas, we'll be able to make ground and have
Absolutely.
the conversations, and you'll be able to bring the conversations back to the people, because that's one thing that I've seen is your interaction with people is that you will be willing to say and be brave. You know, you're a veteran. You've faced some difficult things. You'll be brave and come to the American people and say, these are the issues. I'm working to try to get these things done. These are the people who aren't working with me. And, you know, try to have those conversations, because Congress isn't serving the people right now.
It is absolutely not. It's serving itself for the most part. There's probably, like the Freedom Caucus is probably the only caucus in the House that's actually trying to get some stuff done. There's probably a few other people that are out there, but just the Freedom Caucus is a group I'd love to join. I'd love to see Jim Jordan become the next speaker, if at all possible. Those are people I'd really get behind in Washington.
Well, you know, I want to thank you, Todd, for being on the show. I want to invite you back after the primary and talk, you know, and have you talk to people and share some of your experiences with primary and everything else. But can you do like a quick recap to the people? Let people know your name, really
Sure.
quick about your background, and then let them know where they can go to contribute to your campaign, time, talent, treasure, and everything else, Todd.
Absolutely, yeah. Website is toddforhouse.com. That's TODD, the number 4, HOUSC.com. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter at ToddForHouse, which I'm sure it's going to be on the page here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, retired Army paratrooper, 40 years old, a lot of energy. I've got a lot of young men and women behind me working, and these are the young people I'm going to bring into the party to help grow the party, grow that conservative libertarian movement, because if not, the Democrats are going to recruit them, and they're going to go the wrong way, and the country goes the wrong way. So those are things I'm going to focus on. I'm going to focus on pushing more things back down to the state and local level, getting the federal government out of your way as best we can over the next 2 years.
That sounds wonderful. Well, thank you again for joining us here on the Erin Cruz Show. God bless you, and keep up the hard work.
Well, you know, I certainly will, and when I get to Washington, we'll help make America great again, and of course that will help make California golden again.
Absolutely. I love it. I love it. All right.
Yes.
Thank you, Todd. God bless you.
We will return to the Erin Cruz Show in just a moment.
My name is Jeff Gonzalez. I'm your candidate for the 56th District. I'm a dad. I'm a pastor. I'm a United States Marine. I want to go to Sacramento because we need to bring the Marines into Sacramento, and we need a change right now. You can find out more about me by visiting my website at www.gonzalezforassembly.com. That's GONZALEZFOR assembly.com. Or you can check me out on Facebook or Twitter. On Facebook, facebook.com/GonzalezForAssembly, or on Twitter, Jeff Gonzalez.
And now, back to the Erin Cruz Show. Here's Erin Cruz.
Hello, and welcome to the Erin Cruz Show. Tonight we have an amazing guest. All of our guests are amazing, but really, quite frankly, we are honored to have someone who is running for the United States Congress, not in my home state, okay, but in another state, in Wisconsin. And, you know, we always think, what's the immediate need? Well, we have to look around us, and sometimes we even have to look outside of where we're at. And that's what we're doing here on the Erin Cruz Show. So tonight we're having Nick POLCE, right? That's your last name, POLCE?
POLCE, yeah, POLCE.
Oh, my bad. This is real on the Erin Cruz Show. Real live, raw and in person. But we do, and I'm so sorry for pronouncing it wrong. But
hey, that's okay. No, thank you for inviting me on. I appreciate it.
Of course. So Nick, he's an interesting individual. I mean, he has a family. Okay, he's a real man in the real world, but his background is interesting. He is a veteran. We love having veterans on the show. After graduating college, okay, so he did go to college. He's an educated man. Nick enlisted in the Army. From 2002 to 2014, Nick was an active duty U.S. Army Special Forces soldier. Special Forces are more commonly called Green Berets because of their distinctive headgear. As a Green Beret, Nick deployed overseas 8 times. Let's count that. more than on one hand, 8 times. That's extensive, ladies and gentlemen, to a variety of different global hotspots where he served honorably and with distinction. And we will say that again, with distinction. There's a lot of merit that goes into that. Green Berets are warriors, teachers, mentors, and leaders. Above all else, they are problem solvers. We need problem solvers in Congress, ladies and gentlemen. After serving in the military, Nick began his life in the private sector as an entrepreneur, real estate investor, and part owner at a risk mitigation firm. We need risk mitigation in the U.S. Congress, ladies and gentlemen. Oh my goodness. So Nick decided to run for office to remove career politicians. So I'm hoping we hear that he doesn't want to become a career politician himself when we go into the interview. In contrast to career politicians, Nick's experiences in the military, government, and private sector will guide Nick in his position in the House of Representatives when he makes decisions that ultimately will affect all Americans. And that's another reason why me as a California, I am concerned about who gets elected to Congress, because quite frankly, what happens in Wisconsin affects what happens in California as it relates to the U.S. Congress. But let's get back to one of the most important parts of who Nick is. For the past 8 years, Nick has been happily married to his beautiful wife, Carla, and they welcomed their first child in 2016. His family lives in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. And why do I say that's the most important part? He's a family man. He loves his family. He knows what the priorities are to everyday Americans, and it's so, so important. So welcome to the Erin Cruz Show, Nick. I have to ask you, in Wisconsin, how is it out there? How's the climate out there? Are you running as a Republican? How are the Republicans with you, and how are the people receiving you?
Well, first of all, Erin, thank you. Thank you for having me on. It's an honor to be here with you. Appreciate you, and thanks for the hard work you did out in California a few months ago out there running the machine.
Of course. We're not stopping. We're going for 2022. This is ongoing, but we're going to get out those career politicians, whether they like it or not.
Yes, we are. So as far as Wisconsin, we're in the 1st district, and for those of you that don't know, it's Speaker Ryan's district, and that's the seat that we're going to be taking once we win the primary, which is August 14th, and then the general election, which is November 6th.
That's coming up real quick.
It is. It absolutely is. I can't believe how fast it is. I mean, this week is going to be August, and then right now we're 2 weeks out. 2 weeks out from tomorrow, polls open.
Right.
So it's been one heck of a year. The message is resonating, and we're doing really well. We're excited, and we're just on our final push right now until we win on August 14th.
So now, I have to ask you, because we don't usually do, and we don't generally do primaries. How many Republicans are running in that particular race?
So I have one other major opponent, and I say major meaning legitimate. He was Paul Ryan's handpicked successor, and he's a corporate lawyer out of Janesville, which is on the west side of the district. So it's between him and I right now. There are 3 other individuals in the primary, but they don't have much name recognition, and 2 of them are just not legitimate as far as we're concerned here in Wisconsin.
Okay, and this other individual, is this the one that's rumored as being anti-Jew?
Well, he is one of the individuals running, yes. Okay. And he's made definitely some tweets and some Facebook postings.
Is that the one you were just referring to?
Right, which should make you question if.
I don't know then if he's legitimate, because I don't know that he should be running on a Republican platform, quite frankly. But I'm just going to tell you from my perspective, because I had the same situation here in California where we had not only an anti-Semite running. We had, as a Republican, we also had somebody else who infiltrated the party and wanted Medicare for all. Definitely not a Republican platform person. I mean, they don't ascribe to the same value systems as the Republicans do, right? So I would say he's not a legitimate candidate as far as that's concerned. Perhaps financially he might be.
I agree, and he's not a legitimate candidate as far as I'm concerned. There was another individual, not him, that had jumped in later. That's he's making a decent attempt, but he doesn't have the name recognition or the campaign structure in place.
But what I hear is you have a strong platform that aligns with the Republican values. Less tax, less regulation, less government. And we want to hear about that. We want to hear about we have a ton of problems in D.C., right? You have a ton of problems that people in your district and Wisconsin, the 1st District, want solved.
Mm-hmm. No, you're absolutely right. So our platform is pretty simple. I consider myself a constitutional conservative.
Mm-hmm.
We have a document that outlines the role of elected officials in Congress. It outlines the role of what our federal government is and is not supposed to do.
Right.
And with that, you talked about term limits earlier. I don't think you go to Washington and spend a career. I think you work for a few years.
So you're in support of term limits?
Yes, and I believe 6 years is if I was king for a day, it's 6 years, and that's what we're gonna stick to. So if we earn 3 terms, or when we earn 3 terms, that will be the end of it. In addition to that, the spending. We're spending way too much money. If you think about what happened in the GOP, Republican-controlled Congress the last 2 times, we've had a 1.1 and a 1.3, a T with a trillion dollar spending.
Yes.
We've lost a party that's fiscally responsible. We've lost that recognition that it's our money.
Yeah.
And it should be remaining at the state and the local level.
See, I think of it this way. There's big lobby and there's big government, and they're almost the same.
Right.
Both are working against the American people and what's good and right for the country. So that's something that you're interested in hitting. And then where do you stand? Are you supportive? Are you supportive of the America First agenda in terms of what Trump is outlining for trade policy and other things, initiatives, as well as immigration? Can you touch on some of those issues?
Yes, and I am supportive of that because I think he's got the American interest first, right? Our individual Americans' interests first, as opposed to believing that you go to Washington and you need a whole lot of power there. I think he's doing a great job. So on immigration, absolutely. I support him in building the wall. And in addition to the walls, we have to fix and modify some of the current immigration law that's not working for us.
Closing loopholes.
Excuse me? I didn't hear.
Closing some immigration loopholes. What do you think about putting a cap or bringing down the cap for legal immigrants?
Yeah, so if we're talking about the loopholes, we have that H-1B that we hear about often, where tech jobs are getting outsourced. Mm-hmm. And then as far as the family migration, changing that, or it's also we hear talked about as chain migration, modifying that so we're not able to sponsor. We need to modify that. We need to get rid of the visa lottery. And then also on the asylum law, that also has to be fixed because we have people taking advantage of that.
Yes, and I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, we as a people are really generous, and I'm not sure about you, but my family were immigrants years and years and years ago, some of them in the very, very early 1800s. We are welcoming to those people who want to come here legally, using the process and following laws, but we need order.
Yes, absolutely right. And the bureaucracy right now is it takes so long for you to become come here legally, and so we have incentives to come here illegally. It should be flipped. It should be incentivizing us much like your family. My family, my great-grandfather earned his citizenship after World War I, fighting in the military. So there are ways to do it correctly. That's what we need to focus on.
Right, following the laws. Now, I do want to clarify, though, you just went into, and let me just back up, you just said that we need to flip it, make it easier for people to come in, but of course with caps, right?
Right, so what we have right now is if we want to incentivize legal, going through the proper channels, and then we as an American people can decide how best to encourage and to incentivize individuals to come here legally, which is setting certain limits. I mean, that's what a state and a country can and should be doing. Right,
exactly. So now, where do you stand? I'm gonna kind of go into another topic. Where do you stand in terms of regulation and small businesses? Your district where you live right now, what are some of the struggles that they're having relating to those issues, and what are some of your solutions?
So as a small business owner, one of the big things that you run into is up front is cash flow, right? You're trying to generate cash, and then you have this massive regulatory state that constantly is in tripping you up. Here's a way to think about it. Imagine you and I are in a barbershop, 2-chair barbershop. Right. We're cutting hair, we're doing well. Then all of a sudden the federal government comes in and says, you have to have a lawyer and a CPA in that shop with you.
Right.
Well, there's no way now that we can pay for us and our families and then afford to pay for a lawyer and a CPA. So when you have the massive regulatory state that does those type of things, it hurts small businesses. So that's an area that we need to focus on is getting rid of a lot of these regulations to allow individuals to prosper, and that's the key.
Right. Less government, less regulations. I just love it. So, are you a church-going man?
Yes.
You are. Yeah. Yes. I think that faith, our individual rights and liberties and freedoms, our unalienable rights is given by God and secured by the Constitution, and all of that. They're so important, and I hear a lot of people across the country, talk about hate and negativity and religion and abortion and all of these hot topics. And I don't want to get into the hot topics too much, but where do you stand in terms of, our liberties, ensuring that our freedoms are secure and the rights of the unborn? I think that too much abuse has happened. We've seen the protests, we've seen the hate in D.C. as it relates to pro-choice movement, and people want action. I believe that the media uses it to divide people, uses it to divide people, and the Congress really has been soft on one side or the other, leaving the people kind of in a state of flux, if you will, rather than making decisions and legislating one way or the other. Would you move towards a bill which was proposed, I think, a couple of months ago, which would put protections on the right to life for babies, 12 weeks or 20 weeks in utero?
Yeah, I do. I do support that. I'm pro-life. I mean, my little boy totally changed my wife and I's lives when he came along. And it took a long time for him to show up. And so that when he finally came and we were blessed with him, it was real at that point. We have a couple of those things here in Wisconsin. You have a pain-capable bill. You have the heartbeat bill at the state legislature level. And those things are things that Congress can take action on.
Right. So you do have those same issues. I think we're facing these same issues across the nation, and in D.C. it just seems that they're so slow to really address the topics. And I'm so glad to hear that you're not gun shy on that, so to speak. That you'll face that challenge when it comes up, because what I saw, quite frankly, come through the pipeline in D.C., and this is happening across the board, is you'll have, 5 members introduce 5 different bills, and some will make it, some won't. But why can't we all come to an agreement on one bill, work towards it, and really get the job done for the American people and have the hard conversations? And nobody wants to do it, and the media gets everybody blown up. But we also have a Republican Congress who's weak. They aren't in there doing their jobs and addressing the issues and saying the things that they need to say to get the job done. And that's frustrating, and we need people in office who will take that action, and I'm glad you're willing to do so. Can I ask you one question? Where do you stand on the Second Amendment?
I support it. The Second Amendment is clear, and if we look back in time about why it came about, our founding fathers understood that weapons in the hands of the few lead to oppression of the many. And we saw that play out in the 20th century, right? The little black book of communism. And what's the first thing that a strong-armed or dictatorial government does? Is they go for the weapons from the citizens, they remove them, and then they give them to either their intelligence service or their military or their internal security service, which is then used to oppress.
Right. So do you stand with the Second Amendment as it's written in its simplest form?
Yes. Yeah, it's clear. It's clear about why we have it. And we talk about the historical contents. And then we also, individually, we have the right to protect ourselves. And if you choose to carry a weapon, you have that right. That's a right that we have as American citizens.
Now, thank you for addressing that. One of the interesting things that I decided to bring up in my campaign was I really was in support of being able to have the ability nationwide to carry your gun state to state, right?
Right.
Get rid of the barriers, almost like Obamacare. Get rid of Obamacare, be able to buy insurance across state lines, free up the system. But also the same thing with gun ownership. Of course, being mindful and respectful of each individual state's gun law. Where do you stand on such a piece of legislation?
So the National Reciprocity Act, that's currently at the House of Representatives. I support that.
You support it?
I do. I support that. If you're going to, you should be able to bring your weapon across state lines. And one of the things, I've spoken to a lot of truckers and those in the transportation industry, and that's a big deal for them. That's real, because of where they're moving their freight. A lot of times they're not going to the safest areas, per se. And if they have a weapon, it'd be much more, they feel a lot more safe. And then sometimes they're getting robbed, and that's a big deal for them in particular here in this district, and then others that I've talked to on other radio shows.
Right. And that being because these truckers, the long haul truckers, they go from state to state, and where you live, that could be very easily several states.
Right.
I mean, it is a real issue. So we're really, really glad to hear that about the reciprocity. See, this is why I don't say it. I'll let you say it.
National Reciprocity Act. And one other thing I'll add to that, because just south of us is Illinois. And they have one of the most restrictive weapons policies in the whole country. Go ahead.
But here's the deal. There's nothing to say that bill or any such bill like it, if it's written well and simply enough, that it couldn't be accepted by the states and people can't adhere to that particular state's gun laws. I think that, people think that California is horrible. They have so many gun laws. You can't have a gun here. It's so restricted. People have guns here. We have a lot of gun owners here. There are a lot of regulations around them. But if you're in a job such as, like you say, long-haul truck driver, your safety is at risk. And there isn't any reason really except for government bureaucracy, reason why you shouldn't be able to carry. So that's wonderful.
Great.
It's wonderful.
One thing I did want to ask you, though, and you talked about the gun laws in California. About a year or so ago, they came out with that bullet button. You remember them talking about that bullet button on the AR-15? And we're like scratching our head going, what the heck is a bullet button? But it was a little bit wild when they ended up describing that.
They're not real good on terminology, and you being a person from the military, you're probably going further than scratching your heads and thinking, what kind of morons do they have legislating over there? And I would have to agree with you. That's why I'm working here at the Erin Cruz Show. Do you know, I want to try, my aim is to have all the assembly, California State Assembly persons on this show and let them talk to the people. It's just so important. We have so many backwards people up there in California legislating. But you know what? If California goes, so goes the nation. And the things that we do here affect you over there in Wisconsin, because a lot of things pass through California, for example, goods, products, and other things that get to you eventually. We all suffer as a result of the craziness in Sacramento. So back to you, though, because this is what we really had you on for, to talk about your race. Your constituency, what are the top 3 issues that they're saying that they want solved? And what does your conversation look like with them when you offer them those solutions?
Right. So the number one thing I hear the most is the cost of healthcare, whether it's the premiums that you're paying, or it's the high deductible that you're coming out of cost, or Medicare is not covering certain things, or whatever the issue is. That's the number one thing I hear. And we got a lot of different ways that we can solve that problem, and all of it comes from removing a lot of power and control from the federal government and pushing it back down to us individuals, where we're best able to make our own decisions with our time and our money, and especially with the decisions for our health care. Right.
So you're in support of repealing Obamacare, or repealing and replacing Obamacare entirely?
I'm sorry. I'm in support of repealing. When we lost, I should say the Republican Party, conservatives, when they bought into that repeal and replace, what they said was, we believe there should be a certain amount of federal government intervention in the healthcare market. And I fundamentally reject that. Because if you study the history of healthcare in this country, it's been intervention after intervention by the federal government, which has caused a massive disallocation of resources and has caused problems because there's not a few smart people in Washington that can tell us 300 million people how to run our own lives. They don't have enough knowledge.
Right. So you're in full support of repealing. You know, it's interesting. When I thought about that entire process, the only thing that I thought about was that I thought was a plus, okay? And this is a topic of conversation. It's interesting. Some people don't agree with it. But the only thing that I really, really super ultra agreed with was the fact that through your employer, if you have health care, okay, you can buy health care, it's mandated that you also can buy, not your employer, but through your employer, you can buy health care insurance for your minor up to 26 years old. I just was thinking, well, what a brilliant idea that you can buy it through your employer for somebody else as long as it's a nucleus family member. I just was wondering why they capped the age at 26. You know, the idea of free market systems and being able to buy insurance, whatever that insurance might be, whether it's through your employer or otherwise, I mean, the idea that government always wants to cap things, it just kind of blows my mind. What do you think in terms of like free market system and healthcare purchasing through your employer or outside of your employer?
I think the first step that we would need to take, and I absolutely agree with increasing freedom and allow individuals to decide how they're going to purchase their healthcare, whether in their employer or without their employer. The one thing that we can take action on in Congress to really start this process, in addition to repealing the Affordable Care Act, is changing the tax code. Because right now, almost all of us get our health insurance through our employer because of how the tax code is written. If we were to change that and we were to allow individuals to have the same types of tax treatment that an employer has on health insurance, now that totally opens up the marketplace and gives a lot more control to the individual to decide what type of plan they want to purchase. And this is a key. And we heard all about the Obamacare, the pre-existing conditions, right?
Right.
Why do we have that? Well, now we're talking generally. There's always going to be some small exceptions. But if I'm working for you, I purchase my health care through you. Now, if I either lose my job or I change jobs or I start my own business, I can't take that health insurance with me. So if I get sick or something happens in between me leaving you and picking up a new job, now I have that quote-unquote pre-existing condition. If we switch that, so the individuals now were able to purchase that with the tax incentives, now it's not tied to their employer. So a lot of that pre-existing condition thing goes away because I have it already.
Right.
And that's a distinction.
Well, and I think the idea is that there are many reasons why they don't want to take away those, options and availabilities and the tax breaks and incentives that the employers get. And I've heard economists say and blame the insurance pools and the way they fund money and the way they, it's all about power, money, and control. There's a way to find a solution. We just need to have accurate information, real information, and be able to have people in there that will make the tough choices and make the decisions and free up the free market and do things like what you're explaining, is have those conversations and come to those solution points. And, I look also at this Obamacare issue. It's going to be very similar to the Trump tax breaks, where it's a process. I don't think we stop at Trump's tax breaks. I think we have to go at it again and keep chiseling and keep freeing it up and see what's working and what's not in terms of the economy. And it's similar with healthcare. May not be an answer overnight, but I think that with good congressional members such as yourself, we'll get the job done, and we can do it systematically and really have people working for the American people as opposed to big government, big healthcare, big interests, big lobby, and so forth. So now, you mentioned Obamacare as one of the top issues, and healthcare is one of the top issues. What are the other two top issues?
Oh, I also hear a lot with Social Security and the concern with what do we do about Social Security.
What is your solution for that?
Well, the first thing, and this is the thing that never gets talked about, the first thing is that we have to identify the problem, which is we've had elected officials for decades spending excess money from Social Security. So we think you and I working, or you spend your life working, the money comes out of your paycheck and goes to Social Security. We're expecting that money to stay there. What's happening, though, is so that when we retire, right? What's happening, though, is that money's going to Social Security and getting sent out to the recipients, whether on disability or on retirement. Whatever's left now, our elected officials are then sweeping into the general revenue and spending. And that's a problem. That's the reason why we're running into the problems that you hear in the news a lot of being unfunded or potentially not being solvent in a couple more years. So that's the number one step, is to stop spending and identifying the problem, which is the career politicians spending your Social Security money.
So you really want to have a good look at the inside picture, because it's easy for us to say on the outside, but you have to get in there, be able to see everything that's been going on, have those conversations, be completely read in, and know what's behind the curtain, so to speak, to be able to fix that problem. Because I don't even think that that's just really a legislative issue. I think it's a functional issue, and either manipulation or perversion by the Congress and other certain parties. They're not getting the job done, and why not? That's kind of the way I look
exactly. And the why not is what I see is that because you want to remain in power, you want to remain for a career. And so if you solve problems, why do we send you back? Well, we need 2 more years. I need 2 more years. I need 2 more years. And this is what happens. That whole, I don't really like this term, but the whole kicking the can down the road. I mean, that's what we're seeing.
I mean, call it what it is. Everybody can relate to that idea, and I think it is. It's simply, it's just true. The can has been kicked. I mean, how long have we had a Republican Congress, House and Senate, and a president now, and Obamacare hasn't been repealed?
Right.
So, and these are people who ran on a platform of repealing and replacing Obamacare. So yes, that's true. And now the third item which people bring up.
So I hear there's a lot of different things I hear, but if we're going to pick one, it would be immigration, and the role that's playing in the country. Much like you brought up earlier, you have an incentive model that encourages illegal, and then it makes it more difficult to have legal because of the bureaucracy. And I'll give you an example about in Wisconsin here in particular, agriculture and dairy, right? So this is a big dairy state.
Right.
Well, dairy requires year-round work. At the federal level, we don't have any visa programs designed for year-round temporary type labor to support that industry. We have the seasonal for those that are coming here to work with the seasonal fruits and vegetables and then head back. But as far as the dairy farm as an example, we have nothing on the books to support them. So that's something that we need to address.
So now, do you think that those jobs might be more? Why wouldn't those jobs be more attracted to the American citizen? That's kind of what I want to understand. Is why would Americans not want to take those jobs? Do you know what the solution might be there? Because it just seems to me that there are a lot of unemployed people in America.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I tell you, here in Wisconsin, this economy is going really well right now. They got about 3% unemployment, which is near full employment. I don't think it get much lower than that. So the governor here and the legislature have done a great job of putting an environment in place to allow individual freedom to prosper.
I mean, you still do have a margin there. So, when I think of things, I think of the big picture in jobs. We should always look to America first and ensuring that Americans are to work. I mean, are there programs that maybe individuals who are unemployed could work in those industries and use a balance of those types of workers or job seekers, as well as visa holders for year-round type positions? I mean, there has to be a balance where if we have this, I look at it this way, if we have this open door year-round visa system, then why would we even just not have them here, permanently? It's kind of a quandary to me. So,
no, that's a good point. So, as far as why we're not able to fill certain jobs, I don't know that. I don't have the answer to that.
Right.
What I do know is just from the conversations that we've had here locally the last several months on different challenges that business owners are facing and others, and that's one of the things that.
That seems very real. I mean, what you're expressing to me is that's a real challenge for them to find workers that are Wisconsin residents to take those jobs. So, there has to be a solution because the work still needs done.
Right.
So,
yeah, it does.
I would look to you, though, to find some real substantive solutions, because America First is important, and 3% is still 3% too high. But I can go on and on that one. So I have to ask you one last question. How old is your little baby now?
Let's see. He'll be 21 months on Saturday.
Almost 2, right?
Yeah.
Wow. So you're really, you're a family man. You're doing this for you and for her future, right? Or is it
baby boy? No,
baby
it's a little
boy?
Yeah, baby boy. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
You're doing this for his future. That's wonderful. Now, Nick, can you go ahead really quick? Tell us your name. Tell us just your platform in like 30 seconds, and also where people can find out information about your campaign. I think it's important that people contribute time, talent, and treasure if they're able.
Sure. So my name is Nick POLCE. That's spelled police without the I. Very quickly, small business owner, U.S. Army Green Beret combat veteran, father and husband. Well, a couple things. You don't go to Washington to spend a career. I think they're spending way too much money. We need to cut it. There's a lot of things we can do to increase healthcare access and drive down costs. Absolutely. And we got to secure the borders.
Absolutely.
Now, you can find our stuff at nickpolceforcongress.com. That's, again, police without the I is how you spell my last name. Twitter, at Nick, the letter or the number 4 house. And then Facebook is Nick POLCE for Congress.
Wonderful. Thank you again, Nick, for being on the Erin Cruz Show. We really appreciate it. And after you win that primary, we will have you on again, and I'm going to expect an answer about that 3% unemployment. We need solutions. They might be a tough conversation, but the conversation has to happen, and I'm just so glad that you're willing to do it, do the work.
Well, thank you, Erin. Thank you for having me. Pleasure being on your show.
God bless you, Nick.
All right, bye-bye.
Wasn't that a phenomenal lineup? I mean, it just blows my mind, the amount of good quality people who love this great nation that we have here, and the desire to see this republic back on track and united for the future generations. Thank you again for joining us here on the Erin Cruz Show. I know it's a little bit of a wild ride, but you know what? Together we are stronger. I know I hate to quote Hillary Clinton, but I have to tell you, in that regard, she was right. Probably the only time. In any case, make sure you join us next week. Again, like, share, and subscribe. We get our, everything that we do, it's all to reach out across this great nation of ours and connect one another. This is out of love for country, this entire project. And if you'd like to learn more, please go to erincruz.com. At the bottom of the page, there is a donation section to help keep this platform going. There are some things that we need. We want to make this a better experience for all of you, and we have many, many suggestions, which we really want to keep welcoming, but we also need to be able to fulfill those suggestions. So if you're able to take part in that way, that's wonderful. If you have time and talent as well, we're always open to getting more help. Thank you for your offering to volunteer for this project as well. Get involved, and then again, like, share, and subscribe. God bless all of you. Join us again next week, Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and I'm going to give you a sneak peek. I believe Antonio Sabato is going to be on with us, so make sure that you come and join us. God bless all of you, and God bless the United States of America.
And now, back to the Erin Cruz Show. Here's Erin Cruz.